so much. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Today is our 14th BU Powerfully Talk, and we have our sister Miranda Naiman. She's joining all the way from Tanzania today, and we're so excited to have her sister coming to guest speak and really discuss an important theme and subject that can be a bit taboo and sensitive, which is how do you recognize, how do you address, and how do you overcome bullying at work? This is a very difficult subject for young women. This is a subject that was requested in our BU Powerfully surveys. So I'm hoping that today we'll be able to go through some of the tips and strategies with our sister Miranda, who will be able to share from her own experience how to overcome the challenge. To give you a bit of a background, I love the quote from Miranda. She shared a great quote. She said her life mantra is always strive to be a better version of yourself. So really looking within yourself. How can I be better than I was yesterday? Miranda is the executive director and founder of Empower in Tanzania, which really looks at human resources and building capacities of the next generation in leadership and in business. So we're really grateful and proud to have our sister today. I will leave the floor to Miranda, and then we'll have the Q&A just after. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Verlaine. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. My name is Miranda Naiman, and I am in Tanzania. So good evening from here, and good morning, perhaps, depending on where you are right now. So I'm just going to pull up my screen so that I get the tech out of the way. As introduced, today's topic is quite an interesting one in the sense that primarily, it's something that we've all been faced with in the workplace. But because this network is very much about building a fulfilling career, I just wanted to kick off by giving you a little bit of background about the organization Empower, which is the one that I founded, and how there are some free resources and tools that you also might be able to harness in your career. So Empower, which is the organization I've been running for the last 11 years, we unite, excite, and nurture people for collective growth. So it's very much aligned to the idea of Zahara's dream as well, that we are stronger together. And it is very much about getting the best out of people. So we're based in Tanzania. We're a human capital firm, essentially, and we work in the areas of talent acquisition. We do learning and development programs and team building. We work with the private sector. We work with the UN. And we've been around since 2009. Our purpose and ambition there, we want to inspire positive change. I think we all do, and growth, but primarily led by nurturing meaningful and long-lasting connections that empower people and organizations to flourish. So all our work, be that with youth, with women, with corporates who are trying to boost their bottom line, it's about how do we get the best out of each other. In terms of our values, driven by these three values, and the reason that I raise this now is that I think having strong personal values has really been instrumental in helping me to build a business, or to build my career, I should say. And so we are driven by service excellence, connection and oneness, and being devoted to results. When you stand on a foundation of strong personal values that translate to your organization, I believe that you're better set up for success. I mentioned before our different services. So talent, we do recruitment, advisory, we do HR consulting and team building and learning and development. We've got an insight department, and I'm going to pull some insights from that department to share with you about bullying in a moment. And we work with youth as well. We've got quite a big pull on the East African youth market. I just wanted to alert you to one more thing as well, ladies, because I know you're all fabulous with a multitude of skills. We've just launched the consulting marketplace, and this was something that we created during the COVID-19 period when our business, along with most other businesses, slumped down to 30% of operation. And so you can now get onto the marketplace and exchange your skills and get freelance gigs. So we're looking at the future of work as well. In case you're wondering, how do you register? I mean, there are different kinds of consultants that can register. A few examples, this lady here is an auditor. She's supporting a software development company. We've got software developers that are helping to build apps. And this is across the world. So it doesn't matter where you are able to find some benefit there. The second tool that I wanted to share with you, you can access a free CV builder on our site if that is of interest. Absolutely free. You just go to empower.co.tz and you can get that there. And the third and final thing that I just wanted to share with you is the movement. We are trying to create a platform of thought leaders such as yourselves across the African continent and beyond. So whether you love to write or you have content, a talk show, whether you're a podcast host, or even perhaps you're an artist and you create brilliant material with your family, this is a place for you to showcase the very best of who you are. So that's kind of background about Empower. I think we should jump into the meat and bones. I'm going to kick off by saying, we're here to talk about how to overcome bullying in the workplace, and we will explore, what that looks like. I'm wondering if we can just use the raising our hands function, or in the chat. Have you ever been bullied before? Have you ever experienced workplace bullying? Can you just put a yes in the comment box? And I will come to it in a moment. Or a no, even if it hasn't happened before. Have you ever been bullied? And maybe even outside of the workplace. I certainly know that I was bullied when I was in school. And it used to really upset me that people say, oh, you're being bullied because people are jealous of you. And when you're in that position and you're down and out and you are being targeted by people, weak people, people that perhaps look like this monster, because that's how it feels to you at the time, you can feel helpless. And so today is very much about understanding the gray area, because bullying doesn't always manifest and show up with somebody screaming at you in public. That could be one form of bullying. But we're going to talk about the broader sense, and I think the gray area. What about the kinds of bullying that's happening in the workplace that we are oblivious to, that is happening all around us, that we ignore, could be happening to a work colleague? And when I Googled the word bully and I got this image, these were all the kinds of images that were coming up. So you try it later on. If you go workplace bully, you'll see lots of men in suits with red faces screaming and shouting, or other people screaming and shouting. And I just want you to reflect for a moment. What does a bully look like? Because in my opinion, this is not what a bully looks like. This is actually what a bully looks like. A bully looks like you and I. We will have all had moments where we have behaved perhaps in a way that could be considered like a bully, or we could be sitting next to somebody in our office who behaves that way. The point I'm making is bullies look like you and I. Any of us could have engaged in this behavior or could be partaking in this behavior by not speaking up. So that's the first thing that I want to demystify. The second thing that I want you to think about is just to have a look at this image here. We've got 6 blind men all touching this elephant, and each one of them has a different perception. As you can see there, the man at the back is touching the tail. He thinks he's holding a rope. And the second one is touching the kind of the abdomen of the elephant, and he thinks he's touching a brick wall. And you've got someone touching the leg. He thinks it's a tree trunk. The point I'm making is perception is reality. If the blind man touches a tail and he feels that he's touching a rope, essentially it is a rope. It doesn't matter that it's an elephant. So perception is reality, and it's incredibly powerful. And so when we look at this topic of workplace bullying and harassment and discrimination, and I will go into the definitions in a moment, and we'll do some scenarios too, it's important for you to think about the whole elephant and not just the abdomen or the trunk or the ear, that you are all 6 of those blind men at the same time, or that you are tapping into that imagination and expanding your mind and going, it feels like a rope, but what else could it be? Or it seems like this person is not upset by the behavior that's happening in front of them, but what if they are? So let's make sure that we're thinking 360, looking at the whole elephant. Perception is reality, and so we must pay attention to what's going on around us. So let's have a look at some definitions. BHD, bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Sometimes they are used interchangeably. You can say, I'm being harassed at work, I'm being bullied, I'm being discriminated against. But let's just be very clear on what these three different areas cover. So bullying, it is not a one-off, it is a repeated and unreasonable behavior directed towards a worker or a group of workers that creates a risk to health and safety. Now, when we talk about the risk to health and safety, it could be physical, but often in a workplace it's not. If you're being physically abused in the workplace, punched or hit, that would be quite an extreme situation, but it could be verbal abuse. But the health and safety aspect is around your mental well-being. People that are being bullied in the workplace oftentimes are suffering from anxiety, depression. There's even numbers to suggest that suicides can be caused or have been caused in the past by workplace bullying or bullying elsewhere in friendship groups. So bullying is repeated and unreasonable behavior, whereas harassment, on the other hand, is any form of unwanted verbal, nonverbal, or physical conduct of a sexual nature with the purpose of or effect of violating the dignity of a person, in particular when creating an intimidating, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. Now, let's just unpick that a little bit, because harassment doesn't need to mean that somebody has touched you in a particular place or that somebody has been raped. Of course, those are extreme forms of sexual violence and would fall in the harassment category. And these things do happen. If I can just recall a story of a client, we did some recruitment for them, excuse me, we did some recruitment for them and we placed a head of, I believe it was an advisor, technical advisor of sorts. He started work, he performed incredibly well. But after a year of him working there, these allegations started to emerge of sexual harassment and women were starting to come forward. And in the end, it was discovered that previous employers had also been faced with a similar situation with this person. And in the end, the women all ganged together and, reported it and followed through and, opened kind of filed charges against him. It's perhaps easier when there's more than one person, but this individual had been getting away with it for years. Now, other unwanted forms of sexual advance, and we see it very commonly, I can only speak for my country, so we see it very commonly in Tanzania, and I assume that it's a global thing. If a woman is single, unmarried, because here it's either you're married or you're single. If you're in a relationship, you're considered single. I say that with quotation marks. If you are single, you're considered fair game. There's this misconception that as a man, not all men, but some, I can hit on you. And even though you might refuse my advances, I can keep going because you're probably playing hard to get, right? And I keep asking you out after work and you keep saying no. Maybe if I ask you the 10th time, you'll agree to come out with me. That is harassment. If somebody has said no, if you have said no to somebody who has been making advances towards you and they continue to do so, which is unwanted, that's unwanted verbal harassment. Perhaps they invade your body, your personal space. Maybe they come and lean over you by your computer or like to put a hand on your shoulder. You don't want to be touched. Or I'll give you one other example. I was doing some training with a group of engineers. There was only one lady in the room. Surprise, surprise. However, one of the male engineers at the time said, we're a really close-knit team. We work so well together. We're like a loving family. And every morning we all give each other a hug. And I just kind of looked around the room at the 11 male engineers and the one female. And I just, it crossed my mind, like I personally, if I was the female engineer, would not want to be hugging 10 different men every day that I went to work. And I just said, hey, Susan, for lack of a better name, how do you feel about it? Are you okay with it? And she's like, she openly said, to be honest, I don't like it. And it was this moment of utter, like the men did not realize even for a moment that she might not be comfortable with it, but because she was outnumbered and she wanted to comply. And as women, we don't want to cause an issue, do we? She's been going along with it, and she's done it for 3 years. And these men will give her a hug and squeeze up to her every morning, all 11 of them. They don't mean to harass her. They don't mean to invade her space, but they are. It's unwanted, and therefore it is harassment, and she doesn't have to put up with that. So harassment doesn't have to be extreme sexual violence where you have been raped or you have been molested. It can be verbal, and it can seem quite light in comparison. Discrimination, however, if we're looking at that topic, it's when a particular person or employee is treated unfavorably because of their race, skin color, nationality, origin, gender, disability, religion, or age. And sometimes those can be, discrimination can be part of the institution as well. Perhaps I can give you an example there. We were working with an international organization that had differing maternity benefits and for local staff versus international staff. And so if you are an international staff member, meaning a non-Tanzanian, you could have more paid maternity leave than the statutory requirements. And you had an option to come back part-time. But if you are a local hire, you would have the statutory amount, which is 3 months in Tanzania. And so it emerged, or it came up now within the organization that people, were not happy about it. If we are one organization, if we are all in power, why are some people more equal than others, so to speak? So discrimination can be on a one-on-one basis. I can discriminate against your religion or your race, or make a comment about your hijab, or you're a Seventh-day Adventist and you're never at work on a Saturday. It's really annoying how you're always at church, for example. That would be considered discrimination. So I hope we've got the distinction there. I can't see everybody at this exact moment. Let me just pull up the chat just to see if we are all together. Can you just give me, can you just tell me we're good to go? Like go, if we've covered the 3 definitions before we go into some more detail. Just write go in the chat and I will continue. Or if you have a question, just do write question and I'll stop for a moment before we look at some data and insights. Okay, I'm getting some goes. Right, let me proceed in that case. So I mentioned before that we do have an insight department, and because we are privy to a lot of employee data and employer data, organizational data from the work that we do across the continent, we did do a study where we looked at what do people think are possible causes of bullying, harassment, and discrimination in your workplace. So people were asked to reflect on what is going on in their workplace and why, most importantly, this is happening, this kind of behavior. And I will take you through the top 3, but there's a whole range of reasons why people believe this is going on. Stressed managers, as you can see, being one of the key reasons that bullying, harassment, and discrimination is going on. So I ask you to just reflect for a moment, those of you who are or have managed people or have been managed. When your line manager, or when you have been at your worst self, that's when you are most likely to cross the line over into bullying. It could be publicly reprimanding someone in front of the rest of the team. It could show up as extreme micromanagement, where somebody feels really uncomfortable. It could be overburdening certain employees, and that also can be a form of bullying if you do it in a very intimidating and forceful way. Some of the other reasons that you can see there: excessive workload. When people are overworked, that could cause them to harass other people. That is the perception. Pressure to meet work targets. Perhaps if you're under high pressure, it might encourage you, or it might facilitate your the likelihood of you bullying other people in the workplace. So there are lots of different things here: performance approach, stressed colleagues. So maybe the team is very stressed, and then it brings out a certain side of a manager. We've got their pressure to meet deadlines, inadequate training for managers. Oftentimes, you are promoted, and I'm thinking about myself before I set up a business. I used to be a functional manager where I did not have a team. But when the business expanded, I was suddenly made to manage a team. Now, I had not undergone any training to be an effective manager. And, you know, we see all of this kind of leadership training that is available to us now. But in those days, I say those days like I'm really old, but yeah, that was not necessarily given to me. And so it was, right, figure it out, fake it till you make it. You've got a team, you've got deliverables, and now you need to ensure that they are all delivering as well. It is very easy to cross over the line. I'm not sure if it happened, but not having the right training can be a key cause of bullying in the workplace. We've got poor management styles. I think this is quite particularly pertinent on the continent, without trying to make any generalizations. You know, I've had people say to me through the kind of consulting work that we've done that, oh, in Africa, and I hate these sweeping statements, in Africa, you know, you can't talk back to your boss. I hate the word boss as well. You can't talk back to your boss, and whatever they say, you've just got to say yes and get on with it, because that's how our culture is structured. We are hierarchical, and if your leader is at the top, they cannot be wrong, you cannot question them. Well, that's an environment that I believe would be rife with bullying, especially if somebody abuses their position of power as well. Gender ratio can also be a driver for bullying as well. I've seen situations, I think I've given you the example of the female engineer who works with all the men. She's outnumbered. Perhaps if there was a gender equality in that department and they were, you know, 6 and 6 in the department, there would be a stronger voice or push to say, actually, sorry, we're colleagues. We don't want to hug all the male colleagues here. So let's find something else, a cool high five or something that we can do in place of that. But just to summarize, the common causes there, stressed managers came out as the highest kind of perception of why BHD is happening. So 80% of respondents who were part of the survey say this is why bullying is happening in the workplace, followed by excessive workload, which was 63%, and poor management style, that you believe you need to be an autocratic leader perhaps, or that you should have all the answers. So more of a transactional leadership style over a transformational. So these are the top 3 causes of why it's happening in the workplace. So what does bullying look like? Because it's not just your typical scenarios as you might expect. Let's go to a list of some of the things that bullying could constitute. You could be attacked due to your cultural beliefs. That would be considered a form of bullying. You could be insulted. You could be intimidated. This could be by a coworker or by a manager. So bullying doesn't have to happen from a higher level to a lower level. It can be peer to peer. It could even be from a junior member of staff that is intimidating you as well. Public disciplinary, we see this often. A colleague or an individual in a team being publicly reprimanded or told what they've done wrong. I admit I have slipped on this once or twice, and it can happen very easily, particularly when you're in an open plan office like we are. I have very high standards, and so while I expect my team to hold me to account, I hold them to account to the highest regard, and I'm constantly the same way. I want to be a better version of myself. I want the entire team to push, have a growth mindset, and be at the next level. So feedback is a big part of our culture, but where I might have slipped would be the public disciplinary. So giving someone feedback that they might not be ready to hear, and because you're in an open plan office and because you didn't step into a meeting room, that could be perceived as bullying. So that's something for you to think about and reflect on. And I'm sharing these personal examples to really encourage us to hold a mirror up. We are not infallible. We have to be honest where we might have slipped. Would we label ourselves a bully? No, not completely, but the behavior could be perceived that way by the individual who goes home that day. Cyberbullying, of course, when you're talking about the gig economy and, you know, our presence, our digital brand that we are all using to the best of our ability. Cyberbullying is a huge thing where people are being allowed to run rampant in cyberspace because they can be anonymous and they can say what they want. If they were to step out of that screen, that would be something else. So we'll look at some scenarios in a moment as well. False accusations. Have you ever been accused of something in the workplace that you didn't do? That could be considered bullying, or perhaps you've been accused of mistreating somebody else and it wasn't true. This could be a form of bullying if it persists and it's ongoing. Verbal abuse, you know, any kind of swear words or profanities that are used against you, or name calling, verbal abuse, labels, you're stupid, you should know this. That would all be classed as verbal abuse. Sabotage, thankfully, I've never worked in an environment where this exists, but I believe in, you know, in the large multinationals, particularly, sabotage is a thing. You step on each other to get ahead. So this is also considered bullying. Withholding necessary resources. You could be working in a team where a manager does not give you the full information or does not give you the right resources to be able to do what you need to do. I'll give you an example here. I interviewed a lady who was a member of the sales team. She was selling books, and her manager decided to keep the team's allowance for transport. So when they would go out and have to sell to shops, he would insist that she needed to take public transport and get on the bus with boxes of books. Now, because she felt that she lacked job security, she did as she was told, although she should not have, because the company had allocated resources to the sales team for them to be able to get around town in a rented car, but the manager was siphoning this money. This was, you know, withholding necessary resources for her to be able to do her job. And she really struggled and unfortunately ended up resigning from that position because the person was so deeply ingrained. So that's an example. We've got exclusion. How many times have you seen somebody who is socially excluded in the workplace or professionally excluded? Hey guys, let's meet in the boardroom. Let's talk about this new project or this new client that we've just onboarded. We need a brainstorm. And we invite everyone except one person from that team. Or perhaps a manager picks and chooses certain people. Somebody can feel highly excluded. And if that's happening repeatedly, that would be classed as bullying as well. Finally, put downs. And I would like to share another personal anecdote here. Put downs don't have to be extreme. They can be in the form of jokes. If you've got somebody in your office that you have a running joke that they're always late to the office, perhaps. And it's like, oh, John, he's always late. Yeah, he's the late guy. And you always laugh about it. And John is trying to change that part of himself. He might laugh with you at the time, but who knows what he's doing when he goes home. And the example that I wanted to share came from an exit interview of somebody who did leave our organization and had said that they had become the butt of jokes and that she was not particularly good at a certain skill, and it had become a running joke that she's great at A, but terrible at B. And this was happening amongst other peers. And while she was seen as being quite thick-skinned and able to handle it, she wasn't handling it. And in the end, she didn't speak up about it, and she resigned, and it came up later during the exit interview. So these are all different examples. Gender bias is also an example. Thank you, Nomso. I can see you've thrown that in. So let's have a look at some case studies as well. But I also want you to think about whether you have seen any of these things going on in your workplace. Could you just note down in the chat before we proceed, which of these do you commonly see in your workplace? What is the most common form of bullying that is taking place? It might not be targeted at you, but you have noticed it. It is happening. Please note down in the chat box the most common form of bullying in your workplace. Of course, this is confidential, and whatever we discuss here stays here. Please let me know what you have seen over the course of your career. I wanted to raise something really important while you're just putting that into the chat box there. And that is why someone might avoid bringing up such conflict in the workplace. We assume that people are empowered or confident enough or assertive enough or, you know, understand their rights and would step up and say, do you know what? I'm being treated in an unreasonable way and I will not put up with that. That is not the average person, unfortunately. I would assume most of the ladies on this call are in that category of, confidence and strength, but in general, that is not happening. So these are some common reasons why people do not speak up. Number one, the leadership doesn't provide a safe space or adequate protocol for feedback and evaluation. How can you speak up if the leadership are not going to do anything about it? How can you speak up if there isn't going to be any feedback and you don't know if the problem will be solved? So it also depends on the leaders as well and what they've put in place. Fear of how you might be perceived and how the information might be received. You could be told, oh, get over it, thicken your skin. This is what it's like when you start to become a leader. You need to get used to this. How many of us have said something like that? Lack of connection or relationship with your co-workers or the leadership might be a reason for you to not speak up. If you don't feel that you have a support network within the organization, even if you do have an HR department, that could also be a reason why you don't speak up. There could be a history of people opting out of difficult conversations. You might be led by a team leader or have a head of HR that just doesn't know how to handle difficult conversations. And when you as an individual decide to report bullying, harassment, or discrimination, this takes great courage, and it takes a listening ear that's going to receive the information and do something about it, investigate it, find out why, who's involved, and also verify the cases as well, because false accusations are something else that are a form of bullying against somebody who has not perpetrated such behavior. There could be a history of ineffective, unsustainable solutions. Maybe nothing changes, so you report, nothing changes, so nobody reports anymore. And finally, there might be quite a strong fear culture in your organization. Sadly, I see that quite often in organizations where, excuse me, where there is a culture of fear. We don't speak up. We don't report, we don't share what's not happening. We just get on with it and we collect our salary and we carry on. So it really does quite wholly depend on the culture of the organization as well, whether they're open to this. So these are reasons why we don't speak up. And remember, when I talk about speaking up, it doesn't necessarily mean you are the victim of this behavior. How many of us have gone to speak up on behalf of somebody else? We'll come back to that in a moment. So let's have a look at some scenarios. Verlaine, I don't know if people are able to unmute, but we're going to have a look at a scenario. We're just going to discuss how would you handle that. So here's scenario one. So this is to do with attacking cultural beliefs. So we've got Lusekelo is doing an internship. So it's a junior member of staff. Recently, Lusekelo's line manager has begun to repeatedly attack Lusekelo's cultural beliefs and constantly criticizes his work without offering any help or support. Okay. So, Verlaine, I'm going to ask you to choose someone from the participants who might be willing to tell us, what would you do if you were Lusekelo, intern at the organization, or what would you advise him to do if he came to confide and said, I'm being bullied about my cultural beliefs, I'm being criticized?
Thank you so much, sis. I would like to ask Ms. Kerem, if you would like to come in. Gladys,
shall we try?
Yeah, sorry, sis. Gladys, would you like to come in? Sorry.
I think Ms. Rems wants to answer, so because she is asking a question. She's asking, can you hear me? So I think she wants to share her view. Thank you, Sister Verlaine.
Ms. Kerem, go ahead. Okay, I see your mic is on, but unfortunately it seems it's not working. Perhaps let's go for the next one, Ms. Kerem. By the time you fix your mic, Gladys, would you like to come in?
So let me see. Wow, that's a tough one, I have to say. But I think when something like this happens, you have to make sure that you hear what Lusekelo has to say. So I think I will just ask Lusekelo what's happening exactly, what has been said to her. And I think when something like this happens, that the worst thing that you can do as a manager is not addressing it. So I would definitely ask about the people that are doing this, and have a meeting with them and have more info about what they're doing. And I think you have to put people in check really quickly, because otherwise that's how things spread up in the organization. So I think I'll really handle it quite toughly to make sure that people understand that this is not the way to do things.
Thank you so much, Ms. Grimm. I was wondering as well, just on top of what you were saying, you're absolutely right. You want to be able to get to the bottom of it, or on top of it, I should say, as early as possible. What about the power dynamics that Lusekelo is an intern, so this person isn't even a permanent employee, and they're being mistreated, and of course will be feeling, relatively powerless, and wants to keep their internship, bless them, and wants to put it on their CV, but is being mistreated. This is a typical situation where somebody would find it extremely difficult to report or to find the right support as well. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Let me open the participant list so I can see you all. If I could call on somebody. How about Chicas? Are you available? Okay. I think pulling people up is quite difficult. So let me proceed. We need to be able to get on top of it. This kind of organization should have a policy for its interns. So when the intern joins the organization, they should be inducted properly, and they should already know that if there is a particular incident that's going on, this is how it's dealt with. This is who your line manager is. But if there's an issue with your line manager, this is where you need to go. Obviously, all organizations are supposed to promote diversity and inclusion and acceptance of different cultures. But the reality on the ground is not necessarily so. So if you were working in a department where, the majority of people are one race versus the other, or one religion versus the other, it can be really difficult. So for this intern, my advice to them would be, if you can't talk to a line manager, please talk to another trusted person or HR just to get some advice, and frame it that you want support and that you want to stay at the organization. They might even move you to another department. So that's one scenario. Let's look at a different one. Insulting and intimidating. So we've got that bully down the bottom again. So Jane recently started working for a company. Her colleague Mike, who she works closely with, has repeatedly been subtly insulting and intimidating her during her work day. This is negatively affecting her productivity and psychological well-being. So what is Jane to do? How is she feeling? Obviously, psychologically, she's being broken down day by day. You're definitely in a space where you're waking up in the morning and saying, I hate my job, and I don't want to come in, feeling fearful, feeling insecure, perhaps. Does anybody want to weigh in? Perhaps someone has been in this situation before, or would like to share something that they have seen in their organization that was similar, that worked to combat this.
Sir, can I say something?
Yes, please.
All right, my name is Tori. I'm from Nigeria. Well, I think this is more of an HR's duty, basically. Sometimes I find it so difficult to, answer questions like this, because I used to work in a place whereby roles are not defined, and whereby you don't have work ethics, you don't have, I'm feeling guilty that like I'm painting my country bad, but this is the kind of situation we find ourselves in some work environments. You don't have, I remember my former boss at that time would always inform the HR team to come with a workbook for everyone, so that everybody knows what they have to do, what they don't have to do. But he never, I worked there for 13 years and we never had this book. So I think this issue should be addressed by the HR. They should investigate and of course speak with the manager and find ways to actually help this person. And even the manager, like take for instance, he said some of the drive, some of the reason why some people could be a bully at work is maybe they're under stress. But how design manager is also under stress, work pressure and all, and he also has some personal issues, is affecting him or her, and then he gets to cross the line at some point. So I think this lies, reporting this issue is very important. The HR team needs to work hard on issues like this. That's just my simple thought.
Thank you so much for weighing in on this. I think one of the key nuances with this situation as well, on top of everything that you've said, is that Mike is subtly doing it. So he's doing it in a way that nobody's noticing. So it becomes Jane on her own. It's Jane's word versus Mike's word. And what we often see in organizations is Jane plucks up the courage. She's had enough. She's probably had repeated incidents of being insulted and intimidated. And she goes off to report it to HR, as you advised. And they go, okay, great, thanks. We need to talk to Mike and see what he has to say. And Mike denies it because somebody is doing it very subtly and there might not be a witness to it. So it's a really tricky one. But you have to remember your mental health and balance. And if you are working in a job where you have followed all procedures and you've tried to report it, and you've tried to get support, and you are still being bullied by someone, that is an environment that you need to remove yourself from, be that to request another department or, as they say, most people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So it's an important reflection there. But if you are continuously being insulted and intimidated and the organization doesn't support you to do anything about it, my professional advice would be to move on. Not always easy, but yes.
If I may, thank you.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. This is my first Zoom with Zahara Dream, so I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm calling you from Africa, so I will give you directly my opinion and my view on that. I'm working in an international organization, and thank you for the presentation. Until now, it's very helpful. For me, the first point is to identify that you have been bullied, because I had some situation being here. I'm kind of, I have many characteristics. I'm a young woman, African, Muslim, having a veil. So you have all these stigmas. So coming here as a management director, precisely, I wasn't, things were not going well, but I didn't know, I couldn't identify where the problem came from. So for a long time, I was feeling very bad and I was fighting, I was doing everything so that the work will go on. I have written earlier that I couldn't have a team for 2 years. I have been served various excuses. I couldn't understand just why I couldn't have people, and the workload was so high. It was very difficult to handle it. So at the end, and thank God that I could have some groups like Zahara Dream, that the subject has been raised, so that then you understand that, okay, it isn't me. So just what I wanted to say is that my major problem for a long time was that I was isolated because I don't have my family here. I'm in another country. I'm the only woman in the team. I'm the only Black woman there. So, and people were smiling at me, but then they were withholding information sometimes. Something that will be easier for someone, it will be difficult for me. Or I will be disrespected as a director, and it's continuously. So then you will feel very bad, and you will see how people behave with other directors who are men and non-African. So at the end, it was very helpful for me to find groups like Zahara Dream now discussing the subject, so that I realize it's not from me and that I have a real problem that comes from the people. So this is what I wanted to say. So first identify, I think it will help a lot. Going to Jane's problem, for example, now in where I am, it would be very difficult for her to go, for example, to refer to the HR, because the people here, they are all from the same background. So I have already had to face some issues where I have been criticized for being aggressive. For example, I couldn't understand because I know that I'm a sweet person. So when I'm disrespected, of course, I'm not supposed to smile at you because you're disrespecting me. So when I stand my ground and I will tell you, don't go there, this is my limit, they will go and complain to the HR that this director is aggressive. So I had to deal with this kind of things. So now what I kind of developed a way of being with myself and supporting myself until now. And yeah, so thank you for this, but I think this helped, that identify that it's not from you, but maybe the people that are around you.
Thank you so much for sharing that personal experience. Incredibly difficult. What I've seen with a lot of, international organizations is that sometimes the support has to come from outside or from the headquarters or through whistleblowing or a hotline as a final measure. What you've described is a very clear case of discrimination. And I think if you were to document and write down these kinds of things that you've mentioned on the call today and were to share those higher up, even though somebody might be of the same culture, race, or, as the people that you're working with in the field, I feel that there might be some support you could get there. I would encourage you to try to find that support, as it sounds like a not very conducive work environment to be in, and I'm sorry for that. To the point that you mentioned about being labeled as aggressive, I can see Nomso in the chat has also mentioned something the same. She says, I'm in the ICT sector. As a woman, you constantly face passive sexist bullying. It comes in comments. You're hot, but you don't have a man. You're clever, but not married. You're so aggressive, but you're actually assertive. As a woman, you constantly have to have your thick walls up. Absolutely. I think most of us probably will have heard that kind of terminology, and it speaks to what I was saying before, that often, unless you are married, you're considered fair game and would make these kinds of statements. Even married women face this sexist bullying as well. Thank you for sharing that, Nomso. Yes, let's move on to the next one. As I mentioned before, on this particular case, if you have exhausted all options locally, I would encourage you to find out what might be available to you either outside of the organization or to a headquarters if you are multinational, to see if you can gather more support. A lot of organizations do have hotlines and whistleblowing facilities as well. Okay, scenario 3, I hope we're doing okay for time, is cyberbullying. And I think, Zahara's dream, I came to know about it online. And so we are increasingly online and globally networked and sharing our thoughts and views and commenting and retweeting and posting and whatever it may be. However, this situation here, Hawa works as a communications officer for an organization. She's been receiving abusive emails from an unhappy client. She's tried to resolve the issues with the client, but now she's started to receive repeated threatening emails and messages on her social media. So on her personal social media, this client of the organization that she works for has now looked for her online because we are increasingly available and approachable, I guess. How do we handle this situation? Who would like, Verlaine, do you want to pick someone to share?
Thank you.
Who might like to share?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, my sister. If I can call on Kelebokhile, if you'd like to come in, sis. Thank you.
Oh, hi everybody. Before I get to the answer for this, I want to share an experience which actually happened this week. The very same thing where people have a problem with you and then they go and attack you on social media, and it's becoming a very, very toxic culture of social media users, and they don't actually realize the emotional impact and the reputational impact that it has on other people. Usually in such scenarios, because as an entrepreneur, I've been in a situation where some of my clients will go and look for you on social media in order to verbalize their unhappiness regarding something. I always say, you know what, as much as, yes, we did interact, or transact, let's say, through an organization, it's unfair for you to come and actually look for me on social media and take me down on social media. Rather contact the organization from which we interacted from, because that is our first point of reference, and let's handle that matter internally, because once you take it out, it's becoming now a personal attack, and there's a huge difference between me being an employee at a certain organization and me being a person after hours or an individual on social media, as long as I know that I'm not representing my organization in many ways. So, and I always say, threatening emails also work against the person that is actually lodging the complaint, because I cannot always send threatening emails to people, especially on social media, because that on its own forms it comes up to harassment. It comes up to intimidation. There's so many things to it. So I always, look at such situations as, let's deal with the issue at hand. What are you not happy with? Let's address it with the organization and with the relevant stakeholders, and not take it out, because once you take it out, it becomes a totally different ballgame altogether, a different case. Thank you.
Can I play devil's advocate with you for a moment, please, as an entrepreneur, a fellow entrepreneur? What if, obviously, you're the owner of the company and they come for you on your personal social media? Does that make it okay? You are one with the company?
You know what? I'm very two minds about it, because at the end of the day, if you are promoting your products and services on social media and they come for you there, people know you as that entrepreneurial brand or that service provider who is selling this, So there's a very fine line between those two. Although I always say, before we take things out to social media, unless if the person is ignoring your email communication, you've tried by all means to communicate with them internally before going out on social media. Yes, maybe then you can go that route, but be very strategic as to how you go about it. Be very strategic as to how you also, communicate your grievances, because at the same time, mudslinging and becoming abusive works against you as a person who is lodging the complaint.
Thank you. No, absolutely. I agree with that. Not the positive thing, the good thing about this kind of situation where you are receiving threatening emails is that you have evidence. Unlike all the other scenarios that we've mentioned before, you have written evidence of an unhappy client sending you an upsetting email that you can take directly and say, hey, I work at this company and I do not have to tolerate this. An example that I can think of is perhaps swapping the individual that has to work with this client. I mean, if it's really abhorrent, you would hope that the organization would say, we do not work with such people or such clients. But if that relationship must continue for whatever reason, it's perhaps to swap the person that they're dealing with. I've seen situations where it's stopped depending on how the other person reacts. There are some people who have a higher kind of boundary or guard to people, almost like that barrier to bullshit in a way. I'm not saying that certain people are weaker. I'm just saying that there are some that know how to push back from the get-go. So the bully doesn't keep pushing towards you. Bullies are strategic. They pick their victim for a very particular reason. They feel that they have more power than you. So that is also something key to be aware of. We've got only 10 minutes and I've got a few more scenarios, and I just want to share some things that we can do going forward as well. False accusations. Maybe we won't get a share, but Janice has been accused of bullying behavior by a new employee, Oliver. Oliver believes that Janice is deliberately making it harder for him to do his job by changing timeframes for his work at short notice. So, hey, that report's due Friday. And then on Wednesday, you come and say, can I have the report? It's not ready. Well, that's the new deadline. Janice's manager has let her know that Oliver has submitted a formal written complaint about her perceived repeated bullying behavior towards him. As a result of this, Janice's manager has decided to suspend her without reviewing the situation. So Janice has been falsely accused by a vindictive member of her team. How many of you have had this happen before? Just throw it in the chat. Have you been falsely accused before in the workplace? How do we handle this? You've been suspended. This is on your record now. This is something that can be humiliating, embarrassing, particularly if you are innocent. You need to push for an investigation to be able to have your say. to be able to have both sides of the story brought to the table. This is really critical because it now impacts your future career and your track record. So please, if you have been falsely accused, speak up. A quick one here. Henry is a manager at a company and has been approached by his staff member, Emma, who believes that she is experiencing unreasonable and repeated bullying behavior from her colleague, Sarah. But Henry refuses to believe the complaint and accuses Emma of causing drama in the workplace. How many of you have been labeled dramatic or, as we said before, too aggressive? Somebody has just written, I've been falsely accused of being aggressive. But you have an accusation on you, on your head. It damages your reputation. It damages the way people perceive you in a professional environment. You could be seen as a drama queen for even bringing this up. It's like, get over it. Just, you know, let it go. Water off a duck's back. If you are in a position where you're being bullied, harassed, or discriminated against, and you have plucked up the courage to go and report it, and you've been told to let it go, you have a right to say, I'm really sorry, but I can't let it go. This is unacceptable. I don't feel comfortable. Share how it makes you feel, how it's affecting your work. Of course, all those other things that are, you know, are often invisible, the anxiety, the depression, you might be losing sleep as well. So don't take no for an answer if you're being labeled as a drama queen in that case. And the last one that I want to share, and there are so many more, I wish we had another hour. Scenario 6, verbal abuse. Abby works as a receptionist. Recently, she's had a client who became verbally abusive towards her when she told him that they did not process his application due to technical reasons. Abby asked the client to leave, which she did. However, the next day, the customer returned and continued to verbally abuse Abby for not processing his application. I see this happening often, you know, with a junior member of staff who might not feel empowered or feel that Abby, in this case, felt perhaps that she doesn't have the right to deal with this situation with the customer. This is something that must be reported. Most organizations have a customer service or customer complaint policy. You have to be able to diffuse the situation right on site. I'm really sorry, let me call my manager to come and talk to you so that you're not the sponge that is absorbing the abuse. As women, we like to absorb this abuse and fix the problem. Sometimes we cannot. It is okay to ask for support and for help, to ask for your manager to step in. That is their role. They are also accountable for the organization as well. So verbal abuse, very, very common in the workplace. Sometimes it's disguised as jokes, as I mentioned before. Maybe you've been labeled something, and as we heard from certain people in the chat, you're so aggressive, you're so this, you're so that, you're a drama queen, so no one really listens to what you say. All of this is a form of verbal abuse and should not be tolerated in the workplace. So how do we get to zero tolerance? I just wanted to leave you with a few takeaways here. Number one is speak up. And I know this is not easy. It's not easy to speak up, but you must. Most people remain silent. When we ran our survey, they said that they remain silent about their bullying experiences. It's better to be thick-skinned, and we are thick-skinned, and we need to be, but we don't need to tolerate bullying, harassment, or discrimination. We need to be able to look around at our colleagues. We need to be able to spot signs. If there's somebody who's depressed or anxious or maybe even has post-traumatic stress disorder kind of signs in the workplace, it could be bullying that is the trigger. It could be bullying that is the cause. So let's take care of each other. Let's ask each other questions and make sure that we're all okay. Collective responsibility. One of the biggest reasons that bullies get away with what they do is because 69% of people witness things, but they don't do anything. It's not me. I'm not being bullied. I don't need to do anything. I don't want to stick my neck out. I don't want to take a risk and go and report this and be seen as the drama queen, even though I wasn't even bullied. I'll just wait till I get bullied to be labeled the drama queen, right? So let's call them out. Let's unite. Let's call people out. If you know for sure that someone is being bullied, even just intervening and going, hey, Susan, do you think that's the right way to talk to someone? Do you think that's appropriate for the workplace? I don't think it is. Just standing up for someone. Let's do that more. Let's call people out. We obviously want to cultivate a really positive work culture. Bullying is pervasive in cultures that may be driven by fear. And so what are the policies and procedures available in your organization? Look these up, ladies. Do your research. Ask HR to share these documents with you. Often they're in a scheme of service or an employer handbook, or there might be other resources available at a global level. Know your rights understand what your local law says, the labor law states about such behavior, understand what the organization's position is on such behavior, and make sure you follow through. If you have a bullying hotline or you have a whistleblower program, use it. That's what it's there for. It's there for people to report this kind of behavior if it is genuine and it is happening. And finally, worst case scenario, you can pivot. If you are in a place that you have tried and exhausted all options, as I said before, you come first. Your well-being, your mental health. You do not want to be driven to a point where you feel that there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Even the worst abuse that you could be faced with, even outside of the workplace, there is always a way out. And I think the scariest place we can get to, particularly as women, is when we say, there's no way out. I don't have a choice. I'm just going to have to put up with it. Pivot, get out, find a new department, and find a new job if all else fails. So with that, ladies, I know I haven't left much time for questions. I know that we've kind of been discussing as we go. Verlaine, I will hand over to you for any questions at all. I'm really, really happy to engage with you further, or if you want to reach out to me outside of this talk, because I know that I've exhausted the hour. But I will stay on the line for another 10 minutes if people want to chat with me. Verlaine, please, if there's any questions, I'm here.
Thank you so much. Miranda, sister, you just brought fire to the house. This was just so great. You know, I was actually tweeting now, and you know our sister Pedrater, she was just tweeting, "You're so great," and I was just telling her, I've taken so many notes. My hand is just, you know, just, yeah, no, it was so powerful. And I think her sisters on the call feel it. There's been a lot of interaction in the chat box, online, on Twitter. People have been, you know, looking and quoting at what you've said. You've shared really important tools. Because I think, and I loved what Ashta said, how do we recognize it? And, you know, you've shared with us so many important tools that we very often don't have. You know, particularly when we're junior staff, we don't know who to talk to, what are the resources. And as you said, know your rights, you know your rights and know the law. It's 11 now, but I would like, if it's okay with participants, to give the time for questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions on the chat. I've seen on the box. So please, sisters, let's make it fluid. Miranda is exceptional. I'm sure she'll be okay if you come, you know, just unmute yourself, say your name, your country. You know, we're so diverse in the group chat here, and share your thoughts on the questions. Perhaps if we can give it 15 to 20 minutes. I know you said 10. We're trying to.
I'm here for
All right.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So please come in.
Hi, Sister Verlaine. Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Yes, so I'm Gladys. I'm based in Paris, France. Thank you so much, Miranda, for this intervention. I think it really addresses things, you know, sometimes you don't know how to handle it because, as our Sister Verlaine say, you're a junior staff, and I mean, it's your first job or your second job, and you really don't know how to deal with that kind of issue. So I wanted to ask you a question about HR. Because you said that, you know, at some point we can, you know, address this issue and, you know, reach out to HR when it comes to bullying. And I wanted to know, in some organization, we often say that the HR team is part of the company. So as their role is to support the employer, not the employees. So when you are facing that type of situation, how can you, what to do? What can you do about this, actually? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Of course, it does depend from organization to organization. For a lot of the global orgs, well, first of all, let me just premise, a good HR professional is supposed to be the intermediary between the staff quotient and the management. Their role is supposed to be to implement some of the management's you know, business objectives with regards to people and culture, but likewise, they're supposed to push up views and opinions and any issues that are happening with the staff that have been reported to them, obviously in a smart and confidential way. So that's number one. If someone is not doing that, I would say that they are not doing their job fully. The second thing that I could say, I've seen in some organizations that you have kind of workplace, either diversity and inclusion champions or a safe kind of advisor, like a workplace advisor, who are not HR staff members, but they're usually trusted members of the team that people feel comfortable to go to. I know certainly in the UN, workplace advisors exist, and so they are made known. It's similar to having a fire marshal, that if there's a fire, John will lead you down the stairs. If you are having an issue in the workplace, you can talk to Susan. She's a workplace advisor, and they have gone through some training on how to counsel you through the process and advise you and hold your hand through the process of either reporting or resolving the issue as well. So I come back to know your rights, know what tools and resources are available to you. There could be more available than you think. And if you are really stuck and HR, the individual is not going to be a helpful person, find somebody who is strong enough that you do trust, that you can go to and know that it will be handled in a delicate and strategic way. That would be my advice.
Can I intervene, please, Verlaine?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Miranda, first of all, thank you so much. I really appreciated the whole presentation and I learned a lot. As I told you, it was important for me to see from the outside. Something I think very important as well is that, for example, bullying, at some point, there is a kind of a victim role. I don't know if it means that someone is doing something bad for you. So for me, I think also to consider very strongly that you don't go into the victim state of mind. For me, it was, I mean, from the things that I'm telling you, you will imagine that my life was hell. It was in practicality, but I learned so much. I had to adapt, I had to survive this, because for me, I keep in mind each time that I can leave anytime. But before leaving, I should use all strategies to survive and to see how I can handle it. So I think also to add for the other people that you add that there can be support from outside. And second, be a fighter, be really know that someone, it's his fault. He should be ashamed. It's not you. So this is the only thing I wanted to add, and really thank you so much. I appreciated the presentation.
Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. We're not trying to conduct ourselves as victims, but we do want to maintain that strength and let people know in the workplace that this is just not acceptable. And I'm not, of course, you know, encouraging everyone to go out there and be reporting every little thing that's happening, but for you to understand what your rights are and that certain behavior, we sometimes get used to it and then we normalize it, and that's not how it should be. I really wish you well where you are, and I hope that you'll find resources to support you. The situation that you discussed was an extreme case of discrimination. Any other questions? I can see one in the chat box.
Hi, Miranda. This is Kerisha. I'm from South Africa. So I think when I joined this thing, I was more interested in learning, and I never realized what was actually happening can be classified as, you know, bullying or discrimination. Because I think sometimes, as you mentioned, things become so normalized that you don't even recognize as a problem. And I'm entry level in the organization where I work. So obviously it's on a contract basis, and I understand there's things that you don't do, obviously, because you want to keep your job and you need that. And I think that I've always been the person who's been assertive from the word go. So people know that I do have boundaries, and I find that I don't get picked on as much as other people. But then I notice things where I really don't know how to react to things. Certain things like being in an engineering environment, majority of people that work there are men. And when you walk onto site, it's like everybody wants to marry you, and that's the thing that you get. And, you know, you literally have to tell people, I'm not married. And the thing is, once or twice, yes, it's a passing comment, but then eventually every day it's like, you know, oh, you know, you're so young. What are you doing here? I want to marry you. And then I'm like, how do you even deal with this without being rude? And as I mentioned in the chat box, especially when it comes to people that are elder to you, even when you go to work, when I started, I was told that when you handle people in operations, know that they are older, so you must respect them. And I do respect my elders, but I feel like there's certain things that there has to be boundaries. And the other thing that I also have an issue is when it comes to, I work in open plan office, and I find that things like, culture and race is always being brought up. It's like, yes, I'm of Indian origin, but my mother tongue language is not spoken at home. I don't even know my mother tongue language. So English has always been my language. And we get picked on for knowing English. It's like, we basically get ordered around to correct other people's English. Like, you know what, oh, come here, just correct this English because you know English. And like, I remember one day there was the whole conversation on how you know English and we don't, and this is why you need to do this. And I'm like, but it's not part of my job description. I can assist where I can assist, but I don't want to be forced into doing something, especially when I have work to do. And, eventually it became so uncomfortable that I would do anything to get out of the office because I was tired of being picked on for being the way I am, for bringing certain food to work, because it became so bad that I wasn't even eating properly. And I never recognized it as a problem, especially since you don't know how to react to certain things. So in that situation, I think now with being locked down, it's much better because you're at home. But how do you actually deal with things as where people are picking on you for just being a certain person, for being a certain race, for speaking English well, or for being, for knowing certain things that other people may not?
Thank you for that. It's obviously a very unique context, South Africa, with, all of the legacy and things, the apartheid legacy is a very different and still a very fresh, I think, perspective. I think there's two things. You mentioned the kind of sexual harassment, the kind of wolf whistles and getting the unwanted advances when you're walking through the office. I'll share a little trick that a friend of mine does. She wears a wedding ring even though she's not married. And shockingly, people have stopped hitting on her. I'm not saying that we need to lie about things, but sometimes there are little things that we can do that can just make us that little bit more comfortable. So next time someone says something, you say, hey, my husband, or whatever it is, just to keep people at bay. With the, also to be able to have that kind of firm, like, I'm not interested, I don't talk to me like that, or don't whistle at me like that. Even if they think, hey, what's wrong with you? Why are you so upset? I'd rather have someone think that I'm a little bit abrasive than kind of put up with that sort of behavior. So maybe that's something to consider. On the second part with regards to the English, maybe a retort like, hey, I've got my work to do as well. We've all got deadlines. I'm busy with this. I like the fact that you said, I'm willing to help where I can. I think that's positive. However, it shouldn't be now assumed that you will be doing work on behalf of other people, particularly if they're not in your team and so on. If you could find a solution to that problem and push that upwards in the organization, that would be a really positive thing. You could find that the managers up there do not know that there's a problem whereby there are people struggling to do their job. I don't mean snitch on them and say they're not doing their job, but how about an English course for Team X, because they could really improve their report writing. Or I think when we do our next hire in this team, it would be really good to consider someone who has very strong report writing skills. So be solution oriented. How could you solve the problem without being the solution? How can you contribute to the solution and perhaps report that upwards? Those would be my suggestions. Berlin, I can see some questions in the chat box, but I'm also, should we take some of those?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Miranda.
Let me see. Okay, Meskarim says, thanks for the presentation. My question is one of the challenge to speak up or report bullying. Okay, the biggest challenge is the lack of evidence or a witness of the actions. What can we do in a situation with limited evidence? My answer to this would be document everything as it happens. Anything that doesn't feel right, you keep a journal and you put the date and the time, what was said, what happened, note it down in a book and continue to keep this log of behavior. Even if you're not sure if it's bullying or harassment, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, keep a log and continue to build up that that journal of evidence. This kind of thing will certainly help you if and when you decide to report in future. Because when they say, oh, come on, it's your word against his or hers, your word against hers, you can pull out a book and go, these are all the incidents with dates and times that I have faced discrimination, harassment, or bullying. And I think that would be really helpful. There's a second question that you've also asked: what can one do to create a safe environment for everyone? If you are a manager, I think, first of all, declaring what your position is on BHD is very, very important. Second is to lead by example. Third is to create regular slots where you can touch base with the team that you're leading. Yes, it is good to say you have an open door policy, but not everybody will come and approach you. You need to be vigilant. You need to be reading the signs of the people that are in the team. If you see something's a little bit off, call someone in. The worst case scenario is that there is something going on, and the best case scenario is they're just not feeling so well that day, but at least they know you care as a manager. So ask people questions, encourage people to share difficulties that they might be faced with in the workplace, so they know, if I were to come to this trusted advisor or manager, I will be received. I will at the very minimum be listened to, and at the maximum I could be saved in a way from the situation that I'm in, that action will be taken. Nomso says, elevating. Okay, sorry, that's not a question. Thank you, Nomso. That's a compliment. I appreciate it. Faria says, I have one question. There are points where young women convert these harassment moments to make them look like it's some kind of a favor. How do we help them overcome that? Right. If I've understood you correctly, and Faria, please correct me, it's where somebody might offer or sexually have unwanted sexual advances, but a young woman might respond to the advance because of something that they want from this person, or have I not understood clearly? So women that might also take advantage of men sexually in the workplace, which is a problem, absolutely. We see it with some women maybe working a job, totally intelligent, able to earn their own money, but might be abusing, I guess, their good looks perhaps, or their position, or what they're willing to do with other male members of the team. They might even be blackmailing them with evidence that I have messages that I might send to your wife for, you know, extorting them for money. We've heard of a lot of cases like this. So what I would say to young women where it's happening in reverse, perhaps you've gone to look for a job and you faced, you know, a male HR manager who interviews you and says, I'll get you the job, but you've got to come out for a drink with me. You already know what kind of organization that is. You already know that that is just the first step of many that are yet to come. We as women need to spot the signs as early as possible. And we need to see that I would rather not take this job. I'd rather stay another month or year even on a friend's couch or in my family home or struggling to find a job, rather than join an organization where I am going to be in danger, where this person will always hold this over you and you will never be free of it. So let's spot the signs early. Let's share this with, you know, our younger sisters, and remind them that they are valuable, they are worthy, and nobody has to pay using their body to get a job, get a promotion, or to be validated in any way whatsoever. I think I'll close with that.
Wow. This is powerful. Sorry, I came in just a bit earlier, just before you were closing. I just want to say thank you so much. This has been a powerful discussion. You've given so many important, powerful tools, you know, to our community today. So perhaps what we could do, yes, we did overrun. Sorry, and thank you so much for your time. You know, this is we really appreciate the time you took and the time you even gave afterwards to answer the questions and give us some clarity about, you know, some of the questions that we had. So this is the end of the talk. Perhaps I would love to leave you the very last word. I know you've just given it. I'll give you perhaps the very closing word. Thank you, my sister. Thank you so much for joining us and leading this powerful talk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My final takeaways are that we can stop BHD. It's a collective responsibility. You are not alone. Find somebody that hears you and sees you. Do not put up with any unwanted advances or any kind of sexual violence, or put yourself first. Your mental health and wellness has to be paramount. Do not undersell yourself. Do not undervalue yourself. All of us probably, unfortunately, will or have already gone through one, if not all three of these versions, of bullying, harassment, or discrimination. Please, let's call people out. Let's not allow people to get away with this. Let's keep our evidence together. Let's surround ourselves with safe and encouraging people. And let's make sure our daughters as well understand their value. And that they don't have to go through what we might have gone through in our career. Thank you so much, ladies. I love this platform. I hope to join you maybe as one of the member of the audience. Verlaine, thank you for being such a powerful proponent for women, for pushing for tools and strategies and bringing us together. I really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so very much. This was powerful. Thank you.